Good morning and welcome to Flight 93 National Memorial. My name is Stephen Clark, Superintendent of Flight 93 National Memorial, one of over 400 sites within the National Park Service. The National Park Service is honored and deeply humbled to serve as the steward of this moving memorial and tell the inspiring story of 40 amazing heroes. On this day, 17 years ago, the passengers and crew members of Flight 93 bonded together and prevented their hijacked airplane from reaching its intended target in Washington, D.C., a mere 18-minute flying time from this very location. Ever since that moment, these special people have always been and will forever be remembered as heroes, extraordinary citizens who showed incredible courage under fire. On Sunday, we dedicated the Tower of Voices, located at the entrance to the park. It was an inspiring and powerful ceremony as we remembered their voices through an iconic cathedral serving as our welcoming beacon to this special place. Symbolically, these chimes will forever provide a voice for our heroes. Their voices are still with us, comforting those who mourn and encouraging all of us to follow in their footsteps, that being putting others before oneself. They truly sacrificed their own lives to save so many. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to acknowledge the many dignitaries and special guests who have joined us today. Thank you all for being here with us this morning for our annual observance. I extend a special thank you to the many volunteers and ambassadors of Flight 93 who tell this story to our park visitors to better understand this incredible journey, this incredible story of what occurred aboard Flight 93. I'd also like to recognize Captain Stuart Batachansky and his entire crew there at the USS Somerset and all members of our military, those who have served and those who are currently serving this great nation, both here at home and around the world. Also, a special thank you to all of our law enforcement personnel, firefighters, and first responders for putting their neighbors before themselves each and every day. Ever since the events of September 11th, 2001, thank you very much. Thank you. Ever since the events of September 11th, 2001, our local communities have provided tremendous and unwavering support to the development of this memorial. For that, we are eternally grateful. And of course, we welcome and thank the families of Flight 93 for being with us today as we honor the memories of your loved ones. I am honored to have on stage with me the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. First Lady Melania Trump. The Secretary of the Department of the Interior, Mr. Ryan Zinke. The Governor of this great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Mr. Tom Wolf. Former Pennsylvania Governor, Mr. Mark Schweiker. The President of the Families of Flight 93, Mr. Gordon Felt. And finally, we are so grateful, Reverend, to have you with us today, Reverend Paul Britton. Reverend Britton is the brother of Marion Britton, a passenger aboard Flight 93. At this time, would you all please stand as you are able for the national anthem performed today by the United States Navy Band Brass Quintet. I ask that you please remain standing as Reverend Britton leads us in the invocation, followed by a moment of silence.
Among many of the prayers that he has written and published, Ted Loder wrote this prayer. Empower me to be a bold participant rather than a timid saint in waiting. Help me not to wait in the difficulty of ordinariness, to exercise the authority of honesty rather than to defer to power or deceive to get it, to influence someone for justice rather than impress anyone for gain, and by grace to find treasures of joy, of friendship, of peace, hidden in the fields of daily life, the fields you give me to plow. Joshua, taking the people into a new land, was given a command 3 times. Be strong and of good courage. Be strong and very courageous. Do not be afraid. They, the 40, acted not subdued by the power of violence and not held back by the disease of fear. They, our 40, acted from a friendship formed in but a few minutes, from a peace of heart and mind in their newfound community. They, the 40, were strong and courageous on behalf of you and I and all others. For the love of others and by grace to protect others. They challenge us to do no less than to live strong lives courageously for others. Be strong, be courageous. Do not be afraid. I ask you to weave your hearts and minds into one spirit as we pause in silence in their honor. Amen and amen.
Please be seated. On this day, at this very special time, Flight 93 National Memorial's architect, Mr. Paul Murdoch, will lead the reading of the names of the passengers and crew members of Flight 93. Mr. Murdoch will be joined by family members reading the names of their loved ones. For each name, Mr. Bill Anders and Sharon Custer, who proudly serve as Flight 93 ambassadors, will ring the bells of remembrance.
Christian Adams. Lorraine G. Bay. Todd M. Beamer.
My husband, Alan Anthony Bevan.
My son was loved, Gerald born Bingham, and I loved him very much. Thank you.
Diora Frances Bodley.
Sandy Waugh Bradshaw. Marion R. Britton. Thomas E. Burnett, Jr. William Joseph Cashman.
My sister, Georgine Rose Corrigan.
Patricia Cushing.
Beloved son, father, brother, and cousin, Captain Jason M. Dahl.
Joseph DeLuca. Patrick Joseph Driscoll.
My cousin, Edward Porter Felt.
Jane C. Folger.
Beloved sister and aunt, Colleen Frazier.
Our grandpa, Andrew Sonny Garcia.
Jeremy Logan Glick. Kristen Osterholm White Gould. Lauren Catuzzi Grancolis, an unborn child.
My best friend and sister, Wanda Anita Green.
Beloved father, husband, and brother, Donald Freeman Green.
My sister, Linda Christine Gronlund.
My wife's cousin, Richard J. Guadagno.
My cousin, First Officer Leroy Homer.
My son, Toshia Kuge.
In memory of Carrie, I present the name of our daughter, who was a very loving mother to Jerome and Javon, a very loving sister to Tony and William, flight attendant, Cece Ross Lyles.
Hilda Marson. Waleska Martinez. Nicole Carol Miller.
all of our brother, Louis Joey Nagy II.
Donald Arthur Peterson. Jean Hoadley Peterson. Mark David Rothenberg. Christine Ann Snyder. John Talagnani. Honor Elizabeth Wainio. Deborah Jacobs Welsh.
Thank you to all of the family members and to Mr. Paul Murdoch for assisting us with this very special tradition of the observance ceremony. We also thank Bill Anders and Sharon Custer for their part in ringing the bells of remembrance. In November of 1863, at the dedication of a new national cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, not all that far from this very place, President Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address. Referring to the bravery of the soldiers in the Battle of Gettysburg, President Lincoln stated, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." Those very same words could be said here at Flight 93 National Memorial. For when the passengers and crew members of Flight 93 learned that other planes had been used to strike the World Trade Center buildings and then the Pentagon, they voted to take action, refusing to let their airplane be used to inflict more damage upon this nation. In the process, they sacrificed their very own lives to save so many. Visitors who come to this memorial not only learn of the brave actions of those on board, but are inspired by them. Although they are missed by so many, they will never be forgotten. At this time, I'd like to introduce Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. Governor Wolf was sworn in as the 47th governor of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on January 20th, 2015. Following in the footsteps of Pennsylvania's governors during and after the events of September 11th, Governor Wolf has been a staunch supporter of this memorial. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Tom Wolf.
Thank you very much. And thank you, all of you, for being here today as we remember those we lost 17 years ago today. I want to thank Governor Schweiker, who I have the honor to introduce today and who provided much needed leadership after Governor Ridge went to Washington to help the country respond to the horrifying events of that day. And I want to thank President Trump for joining us in Pennsylvania for this solemn remembrance. And I want to thank you, the families, friends, loved ones who 17 years ago found their lives changed forever. We all owe a debt of gratitude to the family members who learned of the attacks happening in New York, Washington, and took decisive action. Since I became governor, I have been honored to speak before you and offer what little thanks I can on behalf of myself and the Commonwealth for the great sacrifice you all made. This year, with the dedication of the Tower of Voices, there are new avenues of remembrance and new opportunities to reflect on the impossible sacrifices made in the skies above us. And where there has been unspeakable tragedy, the families whose loved ones were on that flight have built a place of aspiration, of hope, and honor, right here in Pennsylvania. And we thank you for that. Each year, all Pennsylvanians remember and honor your loved ones. We hail them as heroes. You know, one of the most overused words in any language. We may bestow it this title too frequently, but the people who found themselves on Flight 93, the 40, in the skies above us are in fact heroes. The first responders and everyday citizens that came to the crash site, they're heroes too. And they did these things in the most heroic fashion, the most laudable things imaginable. They did not know who they were saving. They did not know where the plane would lead or whose lives that plane might take. They only knew that their fellow Americans were at risk, and so they sacrificed everything for them. Their actions were heroic. Their sacrifice was patriotic. We all hope that faced with the same situation, we might make the same choices. But it's no guarantee, because the people on that flight were truly special. They were truly heroes. So on behalf of all Pennsylvanians, I again give our deepest thanks and our most sincere gratitude. In the days following the attack, Pennsylvania was lucky to be led by individuals who rose to the challenge before them. They suddenly led a state that became a battlefield in a country beset by distress, with fear. But where there was uncertainty, they led with strength. Where there was division, they led with unity and common purpose. Where there was fear, they led with compassion. Where there was cravenness, they led with courage. And while they awoke with the same fear, the same worry for their families, their children, their wives and husbands that we all had in the days following the attack, they were stoic and they were strong. And they helped all of us rebuild our institutions along with our confidence. Governors Ridge and Schweiker and their colleagues nationally set a path toward recovery. And their dedication to this very site has given thousands of visitors a means to remember true heroism and real patriotism. And I thank both Governor Ridge and Governor Schweiker for their inspiration and for their service. And so it is with great honor that I introduce Pennsylvania's 44th governor, Governor Mark Schweiker.
Thank you, Governor Wolf. And thanks as well to the partnership and the families. Gordy, thank you so much for the privilege on such sacred ground to offer what I consider to be important reflections. Mr. President, for the heroes we honor today and every day, please know that I am still in awe of them, as expressed the last time I officially spoke here on the first anniversary. It was here that freedom took its first stand. Today, this morning, again, we gather to reflect on the sacrifice that we've never forgotten. It's hard to believe that it's been 6,205 days since they defeated terror in the skies above. But as we know, time has a tendency to stand still when loved ones are ripped from us, yet we continue to hold them so close to our heart. Back then, we made a pact that we would never forget, and we never have. I want you to know that at difficult times in my life, my thoughts go to them. Their sacrifice, their patriotism, their love for America was and remains so incredibly pure that it is difficult for many to grasp. Thomas Burnett Jr. told his wife, Dina, a group of us are getting ready to do something. I have to go. I love you. Goodbye. Gordon Felt's brother, Edward, called 911 to report the hijacking. In a moment of horror, he too was thinking of others. Deora Frances Bodley would be 38 years old today. That day, she was the youngest passenger on board. Deora's mom, Debbie, touchingly told a reporter in 2015, "It's important to me that the visitor sees what these 40 people took on to take a stand for freedom, to take the kind of stand that cost their lives. Maybe there will be some special thing they see about Deora that will inspire them." As I said to Debbie on Sunday at the dedication, we know how special your daughter is. We know how special they all are. And yes, they inspire us to this minute. That's why this moment together is so fitting and, if I may say, timely. As they did in the years leading up to 2001, our counterintelligence agencies are now watching attacks again in faraway places. The president's own director of national intelligence confirmed this just last week when he said, they are growing increasingly aggressive. As we saw in Indonesia only a few months ago, men, women, and children, entire family units, are committing vile acts of terrorism. The threats remain very real, so we must remain vigilant, and we must prepare a new generation of leadership. As I've had at times the university responsibility to relate the Flight 93 story to Homeland Security grad students, reality set in for me not too long ago. The fact is, friends, our college students aren't old enough to remember firsthand what happened here. So, as I marveled at the Tower of Voices on Sunday, I cannot help but think of the biblical and oral storytellers of centuries ago and their own motivation. They traveled and met with countless people to voice recollections and stories of history that remain critical to their past and their future. In colonial times, these stories were shared at the village tavern. Decades ago, these narratives were told on porch steps from Nebraska to Pennsylvania and beyond. Their job, often self-chosen, was to ensure people did not forget the events that shaped their lives and cultures. Might I suggest, then, that these chimes, Paul, on this sacred ground, help tell the story of 40 brave souls who came together by chance, sacrificed to provide protection, and in so doing, changed our world. It's as if these chimes musically ring in our ears with 3 striking notes. We must never forget what took place here. We must never forget the heroes who sacrificed here. And we must never forget and always strive to reach the purity of their remarkably noble sacrifice. So, my fellow Americans, can you hear the chorus? Do you hear the Patriots' call? Hopefully, you do. So when you return home to your daily lives, please share the story of the Flight 93 Patriots. Be their storyteller. And when you do, tell everyone, on September 11th, 2001, at 9:33 a.m., it was here that freedom took its dramatic stand. God bless us all in this important work. And thank you for having me, Gordon.
Thank you, Governor Wolf, Governor Schweiker, for your very powerful and heartening words. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Gordon Felt, President of the Families of Flight 93. This organization and this very, very special group of individuals are an integral part of the stewardship of Flight 93 National Memorial. On September 11th, 2001, Gordon's eldest brother, Edward P. Felt, was killed aboard Flight 93 as the passengers and crew members fought to retake control of that airplane. Since those early days, as our country struggled to make sense of the loss of thousands of our citizens, Gordon has served as the spokesman for the families of Flight 93. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Gordon Felt.
Mr. President, Mrs. Trump, Governor Wolf, Governor Schweiker, Secretary Zinke, Senator and Mrs. Casey, Congressman Schuster, Rothfuss, and Barletta, Captain and crew of the USS Somerset, distinguished guests, those that serve our nation through their work with the National Park Service, National Park Foundation, Flight 93 National Memorial Ambassadors, friends of Flight 93, visitors, and dearest to my heart, families, the families of Flight 93. I welcome you to our annual service to honor the 40 extraordinary heroes of United Flight 93. 17 years ago, I and scores of other family members that had experienced the tragic loss of a loved one on September 11th, 2001, were loaded onto buses and escorted along country roads lined with first responders saluting at attention, and families with children waving flags, hands over their hearts as a gesture of respect for those that we family members lost in what has been referred to as that first battle fought against this current brand of terrorism on American soil. Our destination was a site just behind us on the Western Overlook. At that moment when we first looked out over a field torn asunder, smelling of jet fuel, burned and gravely wounded, we and our country were grievously injured, hurting, angry, devastated, confused, and cast adrift into a world that offered only uncertainty, violence, and fear. Little did we know in that moment that the choices our loved ones made during the final 35 excruciatingly terrifying minutes of their lives, as well as the actions being taken on the ground in New York City and at the Pentagon, little did we know that they would serve to inspire a nation and reaffirm a standard of exceptionalism inherent in those that understand the unrelenting nature of freedom-loving peoples. This memorial is dedicated to preserving the stories of the 40 heroes of Flight 93 and their collective actions. Our newly dedicated Tower of Voices stands at the entrance of this great memorial, defiantly, reminding us of how 40 strangers came together, planned, prayed, voted, and chose to fight, foiling one prong of a terrorist attack against our country 5 years in the making. They were not passive. They did not sit back and let events unfold before them. They did not cower. Because of their actions, further loss of life was averted, and the preeminent symbol of our democracy was preserved. This Flight 93 National Memorial was designed to not only honor their memory and enshrine the history of September 11th, 2001 for future generations, but to also inspire those that take time to bear witness to their sacrifice. 35 minutes, a fraction of an hour, a lifetime to our loved ones. 35 minutes during which a choice was made, the course of history was changed, and a more devastating impact of the terrorist attack against our country was averted. I'm often asked what, if anything, can we learn from the events of September 11th? It's a complex question and one that could provoke hour upon hour of discussion, leading to many tangential responses. However, I firmly believe that the heroes of Flight 93 set a standard, reminding us what we instinctually know to be true, but all too often neglect to realize. The diverse individuals aboard Flight 93 the morning of September 11th, 2001, could easily have been any one of us. They ranged in age, from the unborn to those enjoying retirement, from varying backgrounds, professions, ethnicities, countries, and religions, whose diversity clearly added significant value to the choice that they made. When faced with a challenge that hopefully far exceeds anything that most of us will ever have to face, they were able to come together in mere minutes, not as 40 individuals, but rather as one unified force. They chose to stand together and fight as a single, united group. In their case, it was a hastily planned attack to retake control of a plane. On the ground in New York and at the Pentagon, it was a choice to run into buildings, or if already there, to assist others from fiery infernos on the verge of collapse. How do we honor these heroes? How do we help keep their memory alive so that they can continue to motivate us and impact the course of our history? The answer, as I've been trying to articulate for years, is by choosing to do so. We have to choose to actively remember. There should never be a time when we willingly sit back and opt to remain idle when evil threatens our freedom. We have to choose to be inspired by the collaborative actions of our heroes. And most importantly, choose to rise up and be better, as our loved ones did in their final moments. They deserve no less. And we, as freedom-loving people, can afford no less. For if we choose to forget the lessons learned on September 11th, 2001, through neglect, apathy, or distraction, we will become less honorable, less heroic, and less free. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordy. I'm truly honored to call you my friend. Now I would like to introduce the United States Secretary of the Interior, Ryan Zinke. Secretary Zinke was sworn in as the 52nd Secretary of Interior in March of 2017. He leads an agency with more than 70,000 employees who are stewards of many of our public lands, including wildlife refuges, national parks, national memorials, such as this one. A tremendous individual and truly a steward of our public lands. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the United States Secretary of the Interior, Mr. Ryan Zinke.
It's been 17 years now since September 11th, 2001. And most of us remember where we are and where we were on 9/11. For me, I was a Navy SEAL instructor. I could recall looking in the eyes of the young SEAL candidates and knowing at that time their lives would change forever. The last lines of our national anthem tell us that America is the home of the brave. And on that day, courageous patriots exemplified that bravery in the aisles of Flight 93. Though it's been 17 years, the pain of their passing remains. I visited this site last year with Vice President Pence and was honored to share the sound of the first chime of the families. Our great park system tells stories. The stories of our conservation ethic of the great epic parks of the West, to our battlefields, our civil rights monuments, our women's rights sites, and this Flight 93 memorial that we're honored to be at today. It truly is a story of heroes, a story of tragedy, and most importantly, a story of our shared values of America as self-sacrifice, duty, and honor. It's also a story that reminds us that the fight for freedom never ends. It has to be earned every day. The crew and passengers of Flight 93 gave their lives for this great nation, and their sacrifice shall never be forgotten, neither here in the fields of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or across our great nation. And it's in their name, in the name of all those who gave their lives for our country, that we never forget this tragedy and remain vigilant against those that wish to destroy our values and our nation. Today, as a combat veteran, it's my distinct privilege and honor to be here with the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and his beautiful First Lady, Melania. And I would like to thank Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, for his leadership on national security, his support of law enforcement, first responders, and his unwavering support of protecting our borders. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our President, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ryan. So beautiful. We're gathered together on these hallowed grounds to honor the memory of nearly 3,000 souls who were murdered on this day 17 years ago. We're here to pay solemn tribute to the 40 passengers and crew members on Flight 93 who rose up, defied the enemy, took control of their destiny, and changed the course of history. Today we mourn their loss, we share their story, and we commemorate their incredible valor. On September 11th, 2001, a band of brave patriots turned the tide on our nation's enemies and joined the immortal ranks of American heroes. At this memorial on this sacred earth, in the field beyond this wall, and in the skies above our heads, we remember the moment when America fought back. Melania and I are grateful to be joined for today's ceremony by Governor Tom Wolf and Governor Mark Schweiker. I also want to thank the members of Congress in attendance, Senator Bob Casey, Congressman Lou Barletta, Keith Rothfuss, Bill Schuster, and along with the president of the families of Flight 93, Gordon Felt. We're also joined by members of the National Park Service, along with firefighters, first responders, and incredible people from law enforcement. These are truly great people. Some of you here today answered the call and raced to this field 17 years ago. You fill our hearts with pride, and I want to thank you on behalf of our country. Thank you very much. Most importantly, to the family members of Flight 93. Today, all of America wraps up and joins together. We close our arms to help you shoulder your pain and to carry your great, great sorrow. Your tears are not shed alone, for they are shared grief with an entire nation. We grieve together for every mother and father, sister and brother, son and daughter who was stolen from us at the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and here in this Pennsylvania field. We honor their sacrifice by pledging to never flinch in the face of evil and to do whatever it takes to keep America safe. "17 years ago, your loved ones were among the 40 of Flight 93, the 40 passengers and crew members on board the 8 a.m. United Airlines flight from Newark to San Francisco. They were men and women from every background. They were young people returning from visiting family, moms and dads on business trips, and friends going and coming from birthdays and weddings. They boarded the plane as strangers, and they entered eternity, linked forever as true heroes. Soon after takeoff, Flight 93 was hijacked by evil men bent on terror and conquest. Passengers and crew members began using their phones to call home. They learned that 2 planes had already crashed into the World Trade Center in New York City. Immediately, those on board Flight 93 started planning a response. Sandy Bradshaw, a flight attendant, called her husband and told him they were in the back of the plane preparing hot water to throw onto the hijackers. Passenger Jeremy Glick explained the plan to his wife and said, "Stay on the line, I'll be back." The passengers and crew members came together, took a vote, and they decided to act. At that moment, they took their fate and America's fate back into their own hands. In the last 20 minutes, many placed their final calls home, whispering those eternal words, "I love you." Some said the Lord's Prayer, and then they bravely charged the cockpit. They attacked the enemy. They fought until the very end, and they stopped the forces of terror and defeated this wicked, horrible, evil plan. Flight 93 crashed yards from where we stand, just 20 minutes flying time from the United States Capitol. Through their sacrifice, the 40 saved the lives of countless Americans, and they saved our capital from a devastating strike. In the days after the attack, tens of thousands of firefighters, police officers, and recovery workers traveled to New York and Arlington to crawl through the rubble and search for survivors. There were prayer vigils, memorials, and charity drives all across our nation. Here in Shanksville, many of you raised up the first memorial, a wooden cross, a chain-linked fence, mementos and tributes pouring in, and dozens of American flags. A piece of America's heart is buried on these grounds, but in its place has grown a new resolve to live our lives with the same grace and courage as the heroes of Flight 93. This field is now a monument to American defiance. This memorial is now a message to the world. America will never, ever submit to tyranny. Since September 11th, nearly 5.5 million young Americans have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces. Nearly 7,000 service members have died facing down the menace of radical Islamic terrorism. Today, we also think of the more than 200,000 service members now serving overseas. And we think of every citizen who protects our nation at home, including our state, local, and federal law enforcement. These are great Americans. These are great heroes. We honor and thank them all. As Commander-in-Chief, I will always do everything in my power to prevent terrorists from striking American soil. Here with us today is Dorothy Garcia Blockler. Her husband, Sonny, was one of the passengers on Flight 93. On September 11th, 2001, just over a month after their 32nd wedding anniversary, Sonny was on his way back from a business meeting. He called Dorothy, who he loved so much, called her on the plane and uttered her name before the line went dead silent. In the days after the attack, Dorothy told the investigators there was only one thing she wanted from this field: her husband's wedding ring. They would know it by the inscription etched inside. "All my love," it said, followed by the number 8269, the date of their anniversary. The officers, great people, promised to try, but in this field of records, it seemed certainly impossible. Dorothy began to pray, and she asked her friends to do the same. Days went by, then months. Still no ring. A week before Christmas, on December 19th, she heard a knock at the door. Two officers were standing with a really beautiful, to her, she saw it was so beautiful, she knew what was happening. A beautiful, small white box. Inside it was a wallet, a luggage tag, a driver's license, a small bag with the wedding ring inscribed with those three precious words: "All my love." Those words echo across this field, and those words tell the story of 40 men and women who gave all their love for their families, their country, and our freedom. To Dorothy and to every family here today, America will never forget what your loved ones did for all of us. Earlier this week, you dedicated the final part of this memorial, the Tower of Voices. Standing at 93 feet tall, the Tower of Voices is now the first structure visitors see when they come to this now sacred ground. It will hold 40 beautiful chimes that ring throughout these fields, each a unique note, but all in perfect harmony. Each time we hear those chimes playing in the wind, we will remember the 40. We will remember their faces, their voices, their stories, their courage, and their love. And we will remember that free people are never at the mercy of evil, because our destiny is always in our hands. America's future is not written by our enemies. America's future is written by our heroes. As long as this monument stands, as long as this memorial endures, brave patriots will rise up in America's hours of need, and they too will fight back. "17 years ago, 40 incredible men and women showed the whole world that no force on earth will ever conquer the American spirit. We treasure their memory, we cherish their legacy, and we ask God to forever bless the immortal heroes of Flight 93. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the families, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Indeed, Mr. President, thank you so much for those inspiring and moving words. And once again, we are truly honored to have you and the First Lady with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask that you please remain seated to allow the speakers the opportunity to personally reflect on this solemn ceremony inside the Visitor Center. The United States Navy Band Brass Quintet will now share their talents with us as we conclude today's service. So to all of you, to all of the family members of Flight 93, those who are here with us and those who are not, and to everyone watching at home and all over the world, thank you again for taking the time to remember the passengers and crew members of Flight 93 and the nearly 3,000 lives that were lost on this day 17 years ago. Thank you.